In the floral morphology, let's talk about thalamus. Now, thalamus is an interesting part. It is a broad swollen part which is present at the base, and this swollen part is also known as Torus or receptacle. Now, this thalamus has been explained as one of the major parts which is at the tip of the pedicel, and there are various names through which we can understand it. Anthophore is present when the internode exists between the calyx and the corolla. That's the first word which is the sepals and the petals. So we call it as anthophore if it is present between calyx and corolla. Right? A good example is Dianthus plant. The next is gonophore. Gonophore is where the internode is present between corolla and androecium. A good example is Passiflora. The next is gynophore, when the internode is present between the androecium and the gynoecium. That's the third and the fourth word. And a good example is Capparis. The next is Gynandrophore. Gynandrophore is where both androphore and gynophore are present. Right? So when you have both androphore and gynophore that is present, we call it as gynandrophore. The next is carpophore. Carpophore is when the thalamus is between the two carpels and is elongated. Actually, after bifurcation, it protrudes out of the carpel, and therefore it is known as carpophore. A good example is corundrium. Right? The next is, on the basis of the position of the thalamus, we also describe it in three forms, which is known as epigynous, hypogynous and perigynous. Epigynous is where the ovary is actually inferior. That means it is placed below the other whorls. A good example is in guava. The next is hypogynous, in which the ovary is superior. That means it is placed above the other whorls. China rose is a good example for that. The next is perigynous. Perigynous means ovary is half superior and half inferior, and thalamus can be present as a disc. A good example is prunus. And this perigynous is usually in the shape of rose. So it is, perigynous is also called as rose shape. So as you can understand the various whorls, the sepal, the calyx, petals, the corolla. Then you have androecium, the third whorl, which is the male organ, and the gynoecium, which is the carpels, which is the fourth whorl. And the location of the thalamus based on its relative position and based on the condensed form of the thalamus along with the internodes, how elongated the internodes are, based on which we call it as anthophore, gynophore, gonophore, carpophore and so on. So this was a basic lecture on thalamus in floral morphology. More topics of floral morphology are yet to come. Stay subscribed.